There's a rhythm in every company, whether you notice it or not. It's things like the pace of communication, the pulse of decisions, the tempo of how people work and respond. And more often than not, that rhythm is set by you, the founder. And if you're always on, well, your company is always on too. And while that might sound like commitment, it might be doing something that you don't want. It might be exhausting everyone, including you. Hi, I'm James, and you're listening to Leadership in 5. And this series, Leadership Under Pressure, looks at how the demands of speed and access and expectation, they slowly distort what leadership was meant to be. Now, I've already talked in earlier episodes about control and delegation, but this episode, it's different. This isn't about control. This one's about pace. Because even when you delegate well, even when you trust your people, if you're still always on, your team is still chasing your energy. It's like an engine that never idles. At first, it sounds powerful. There's movement and noise and there's heat, all signs of life. But an engine that never slows down, well, it eventually overheats. It wears out things like the bearings and it drains every bit of fuel that you put into it. The problem isn't motion. It's actually the absence of rest. And that's what happens when you stay constantly connected. You become the company's metronome, where every email and text and late night message is actually telling people how fast they need to move. Now, I get it. You don't mean to make that happen, but your availability, it actually becomes the permission slip for everyone else's anxiety. Your team starts to believe that responsiveness equals reliability, and that speed matters more than judgment. That the measure of commitment is how quickly they reply, not actually how deeply they think. And pretty soon, everyone's just reacting to noise. You can see it in the language people use. Hey, just circling back. Wanted to make sure this stayed top of mind. Those phrases, they sound pretty harmless, but they reveal a culture that's running on momentum instead of actually meaning. In episode 56, called Your Culture Isn't Broken, Your Execution Is, I talked about how behavior reveals culture more than words actually ever will. And this is one of those places. You don't have to announce a culture of urgency. You just have to model it. When people see you responding at all hours, they assume that's what it takes to belong here or to get ahead here. And the few who can't or won't keep that pace, they start to feel like they're letting you down, even when they're actually performing well. Here's the deeper truth. Being always on doesn't make you a better leader. It makes you a more reactive one. Now, when you're in constant motion, you lose the ability to see patterns. You trade perspective for presence. You start solving problems that would have solved themselves if you just given them a day. You mistake movement for momentum and communication for actual connection. There's a point in every founder's journey when they realize that what used to help them grow, it's now holding them back. At the beginning, your speed built that trust, but now that same speed is training people not to think, not to decide, and not to take ownership. Now, they're not avoiding responsibility. They're actually running out of room for reflection. Your calm becomes their clarity. Your restraint becomes their room to grow. Your ability to rest becomes their permission to think. The real cost of always on leadership isn't burnout. It's actually blindness. You lose sight of what's working because you're too busy watching everything move. You can't see excellence because you're fixated on the activity. And you start measuring commitment by proximity instead of progress. When you step back, when you create stillness, you give everyone, including yourself, the chance to think and to plan and to breathe. And that's where real leadership happens. So, as you know, I want to give you something to reflect on. And here's today's reflection. If your presence sets the pace for everyone else, what rhythm have you been teaching them to keep? And that's what we're thinking about today.